I saw Days got picked up for 2 more, is it years or
2
seasons?
years.
Whoa. So did they ever have that when you were there, or was it like when you first signed, didn't you sign a 4-year contract originally?
Yes. I signed a 4-year originally, and then I want to say after that they might have had 1 2-year.
Okay.
So I think they finished out the 4, then they might have had a 2-year, and then it's been for the last 4 years it's been 1 1 1 1.
Wow.
So now I'm curious too for all the actors if they're going to be offering 2-year contracts again, or if they're going to be doing just 1 year. Because the reason we always did 1 year was sometimes the actors didn't want to be locked in for longer than a year, but they also didn't know if the show was going to be picked up, so they would just do year-long contracts, which also was like a weird vibe the last 4 years, because as soon as you start your contract and you blink, you're like, I only got 9 months left.
Yeah.
But if you had 2 years, it feels like you can go, oh, okay, I'm good for 2
job.
years, even though they could still let you go after every 26-week cycle. But but it was always like, you know,
Stressful.
yeah, you have 9 months, and then what are you going to do for a living?
Huh.
You know, you've got 8 months. What are you going to do? And then, oh, you're renewed for a year. Your contract's okay. Then you have like about 3 months where you're feeling confident. And you're like, in 9 months, what are we going to do for a living? So it's always been, that's why it's transferred over to this, of why I feel like what we're doing now, it's just kind of like, you know what I mean? Because we haven't had a paycheck
from a job
in 15 months.
Yeah.
So every penny we've earned has been, no one's paid us that. We have earned it as self-employed people or entrepreneurs or whatever you want to call us. And that's very rewarding, but it also has that same,
stressful.
Yeah, because you're just like, okay, well, so we got money for this amount of time, and then like 3 months go by, and then you're like, oh, now we just got extended another 6 months of money, and then so you're kind of like you're like responsible. So that comes with a lot of freedom, but it also comes with all of the accountability and responsibility.
But do you think back in the day on Days, like say in the 80s, 90s, that they had long contracts? Like what would you imagine that to have looked like back then? Because back when it was like soaps were it.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know why they would do a 4-year with me.
In the beginning?
Yeah, it seems like that could have been pretty traditional.
Right?
And that unless you were one of the bigwigs where like
they wanted
maybe
to do
they were
1 year.
one at a time. There's been a lot of actors and actresses who have left and go, I'm not signing a year contract, but I'll do recurring. But then Days is like, no, because if we write for you and then you're not under contract and you go book something, then we're screwed.
Huh.
So it's kind of like I understood that, where I go, oh yeah. Imagine they're just like, hey, we need you. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not under contract, so I'm not obligated. I'm going to go on vacation instead.
Wow.
But then you burn a bridge. But I'm just saying in general,
It
they
could be
want to know.
messy.
People wouldn't do that. But if they booked a pilot or a movie, they'll go, sorry, can't. But if you're contractually obligated, then you can't take the movie.
Well, and that's what's very interesting about working on a soap, especially when you're a younger aspiring actor. It's been used plenty of times for people to have great thriving careers, but other people at times start on a soap. Like I think even Brad Pitt and George Clooney, and it was kind of like a stepping stone to go into movies. And obviously there's a lot going on in the world now where movie stars now do TV and everyone's just like commingling, if you will. But it's interesting to see because when you were young too, you were like, well, what if I get this audition that I'm going out for while I'm on Days, you know, and trying to have the schedules aligned. So it's all just really interesting. And it's just another part of just having something in any industry where there is risk and making the right decision. And you're like, is this right? Is this meant to be? What do I do?
But you'll never know.
No, that's
you know, that's the thing. There was actually there was a friend that I was hanging out with during the booking of Days, and I remember when it came through that I tested for it or whatever. I remember she was like, she's like, I wouldn't do it. She goes, you're young. She's like, it's 4 years, and she goes, I would pass. And I remember thinking like, yeah, but I haven't worked. I mean, I was on 90210, but the contract. Here's the interesting thing. I bet you the new people on Days now are getting a way better deal than we got in 2011.
Probably.
Because my first 2 years there was like peanuts.
Hey, it's your first thing though.
But I think there are people now who got in for a year. See, here's what goes down. When you do a 4-year contract, you come in as a nobody, so they don't have to pay you. But after 2-3 years of your contract, now all of a sudden you have equity because people are a fan of you and people want to see you. So you add value, but you can't negotiate higher prices because you're locked into a 4-year contract that you signed when you were a nobody. But now when these actors are coming in who sign a 1-year deal within a year, become a mega star on the show, they have leverage to negotiate for year 2.
Wow.
Because they would say, well, they're like, oh my gosh, the fans love you. We want you to come back for year 2. Then the person could say, well, I want this much money. Where when I'm locked in for a 4-year contract, it was just, so the first couple years was not that much. I mean, it was still a lot. If you knew the gross, you'd be like, wow. But even in my first 4 years, I had a manager and an agent that was getting 20% plus 30% in taxes, plus 9.25% in sales tax.
Ugh.
So technically, you're only keeping 40% of your money. So hypothetically, if it was, say, $100,000 a year, you're like, wow, at 22, you're making 6 figures. You're taking home $40,000.
Wow.
And the cheapest rent is $1,500. So you don't even make enough to pay your rent.
Oh my gosh.
So the only reason that I had money during the first 2 years of Days was because I booked 6 national commercials and made like a couple $100,000.
Yeah. You were like the commercial king.
But that's supplemented those 2 years before it started getting higher.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting because people will think like, oh, people and there are people making really good money, but you also have to take into consideration where it's located.
Where it's located, if you have families.
The cost of
that looks like.
Yeah. Like I would say in California, especially now with taxes, in compared to like my hometown, $75,000 in my hometown a year, you are going out to eat when you want. You're driving a car that's like newer.
Yeah.
That's like,
yeah,
10,000 miles on it, going out to dinner, hanging out with friends, remodeling your house, like 75,000. And then if you're married to someone who makes 50, 60,000, I mean, you're crushing it. In California, that's probably equivalent to $250,000 and maybe like $350 as a household because you're getting taxed so much and the cost of living is so much that even if you're left with $8,000 cash after everything per month, your mortgage is $4,000. Your groceries are $1,500. I mean, your money's gone.
It goes quick.
So that's the interesting part. And with actors, that's even crazier because your manager, your agent, and then some publicist, and then your accountant.
That's true.
Like even my accountants over the year, plus Lisa who stole, but even my accountant for the past 4 years before we moved was expensive.
Yeah.
So when you really do all the math, that's why you and I have always been super hungry of like, what else can we do?
Yeah.
How do you lower your overhead?
Yeah.
And because you're kind of just spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, especially when we made mistakes. You don't have any leeway. So it's just been a huge roller coaster. But I'm really, really, really happy that they got 2 more years because I remember Ken Corday years ago was like, we're going to make it to 60. And he said that like 5 years ago. I think they got renewed through year 58.
Oh.
So
he's going to want to do 60. I got to say, though, the fact that they just got 2 more years and in a world where I guess soaps have not made it that much, that's such a huge accomplishment.
I think Days held on during a very, very pivotal moment. And I think that they got hammered in 14, 15, 16.
Yep.
And there was like talks of like a potential talk show coming in and all those things were happening. And it was like the numbers weren't doing well in comparison. But then something magical happened. All these apps came out. YouTube, social media, everything became popular.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you people at NBC are looking around going, we had 6 new shows come out. No one's watching them. We just spent millions of dollars. All that's working is dance shows, voice shows, reality shows at night, prime time. Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Kind of like all this great, cheap entertainment. and they're trying these new primetime shows. We had a friend whose show got canceled, and they were doing millions of views, but on primetime, you need millions of views.
It's on Netflix now, though.
Yes, so that's really good. But I'm saying that they're probably looking at Days of Our Lives going, it's always consistent.
Yeah.
So I think we hit now a point where there's so many platforms. You know, for some reason, our Hulu, I got to like change, maybe the card's expired or something. But Hulu was like, oh, we couldn't charge your card. And I was like, oh, I'll redo it. And then I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't need Hulu. I watch like Shark Tank on Hulu, but I don't watch it. Why was I paying $7 a month?
Happens.
And then I spend all my time on Amazon Prime and on Netflix. 98% of everything I watch is on those two platforms, but I'm seeing Paramount. I'm seeing Discovery Plus.
Those are the two
Peacock.
those are the two I'm using.
Disney Plus is absolutely crushing it.
Yeah.
HBO Max.
Yep.
But there's just so many now of these different platforms. So I think NBC at this point in 2021 is looking at going, Days is doing 1.5 million every single day.
Let's keep it. Yeah.
What's the chances they got 2 years? After almost being canceled for 4 years in a row, and now you get 2 years. And so that's the fan base.
Yeah.
The fan base does not waver. They love the show, and it's a staple of NBC, just like The Tonight Show.
Yep. And you got to think, too, for NBC, the fact that it's already a well-oiled machine. It's been there for 56 years now.
Yeah.
They have the sets built, the teams. Like, why would you want to cancel all of that and start something new? Unless it wasn't performing well, but it is. So I don't know. When you just look at all of those different details of it, it just kind of makes sense why they would keep it.
Yeah, and I think he is snoring like every 10 seconds.
I know.
Yeah, but it was really good news, and I think it's good to keep it running.
I know. So congrats, Days.
Yeah, it was really good news. I keep up on all the Days news from Instagram.
Me too.
You see
I
posts?
saw Eric's story and I go, oh shit.
Yeah.